Hi, it's Louise here of Timeless Craft Mama, and today I'm bringing you a scrapbook layout that I've created for Scrapbook Boutique, inspired by their February mood board. Such a fun and romantic mood board this month that I've decided to create a layout from my wedding. And I love to go back and redo pages and photos from my wedding album as styles change so that I can incorporate some of the different types of scrapbooking as things advance. So I always tend to go back to these old photos and scrap them every now and then. So I've started today with a piece of the Free Spirit paper from Cocoa Vanilla Studio, and it's really so pretty, but I felt that the pinks were probably not the right colour for this particular mood board. So I've raided my stash for some old papers and put them together. You'll see I've got some nice patterned blacks and whites with some touches of gold and then some reds in there as well. So I'm just going ahead and cutting a couple of strips of paper here, and you'll see how I'm going to start to build this layout as we get to sticking them down. So I'm going to go ahead and measure around my photo and just place a little sketch there to make sure I can remember where I want that photo to go. And then I'm going to pop some of these pieces of paper onto the page. So I'm just working with the various strips. And if I was going to layer these all flat, I would overlap them and sort of pop them in different positions so that they were covering each other. But what you'll see is I'm actually going to lay just a couple of those strips flat. Then I'm going to add some mists, and then I'm going to raise some of those strips of paper up. So you'll sort of see why I left a few gaps as this video progresses. So now I'm going to go ahead and add just a thin layer of clear gesso, and you don't need much of this. It does spread quite a long way, and when it dries it really has this rough texture that gives those mediums something to stick to. So moving on, I'm just going to give a light spray to this page, and then I'm going to sprinkle some water around. Now the sprinkling of the water just helps that mist to sort of spread itself out a bit. So this is the Dilutions Cherry Pie, and as I start to drop some of it around, you'll see I'm adding water and moving it around on the page. So that just gives a nice little way to spread that colour around without it being so structured. Now I was looking at this page and I was thinking to myself, wow, it looks like somebody bled all over the paper. Not good. But I knew that I was going to add some gold in there. So this is the Shimmers Gold Spray, available in the Scrapbook Boutique store. And I'm using the same technique. So I'm just sprinkling it around, using lots of water, adding some layers, letting it dry, a bit more spray, a bit more colour, and that's just to help blend that red colour, which was starting to look a little bit too bright. So I've just used a stamp from my stash, and I'm going to go ahead and heat emboss some of the Ranger Gold embossing powder, and this is again just to give another little layer to that texture to make everything sort of have that really bright gold, shimmery, romantic kind of colour that this mood board really wanted. So the photo I chose was also inspired by the mood board, and in the mood board you'll see that there's some lips, some really red lips. Now our theme colours for our wedding were black and white with a touch of red, so I wanted to really use a wedding picture for this particular mood board because I thought it would suit it down to a T. So the lips, I chose a picture of my husband and I kissing on our wedding day, and of course the colours had to be red because that was the theme of our wedding. Once all of those mediums have dried, I'm going to go ahead and take a little doily here which I've cut in half just to help it sort of stand out from that background a little bit. And then I'm going to prepare to mount some more of that tape. So you'll see here I've got some raised foam tape, and I'm going to pop that on the back of some more of these strips and start to actually lay that out on the page. So it's kind of what I would normally do when laying strips of paper, but instead of doing it all at one level, by using the foam tape, it sort of just raises everything up and it just gives it another element of fun and texture, something else to look at. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with all those sheets of paper, and then we'll move on to putting this page together. Now you'll notice in there that I also did pull out some gold glitter tape, but it really just wasn't working for me with this particular layout, so I ditched that idea. I'm going ahead and mounting the photo onto some card just to again help raise that off the page and add to those layers of texture, ready to pop those finishing touches on this particular page. So I've also got a couple of papers in there that, I was sort of playing around with, deciding if I wanted them on the layout, if I didn't want them, and in the end, most of it went on, but there were a couple of papers that I decided I didn't want. So another stamp from my stash, this time hearts, and of course very appropriate for this particular photo and the layout. So February is, of course, the month of love with Valentine's Day, so really appropriate mood board and so much fun to play with between the colours and those beautiful on-trend gold touches as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just pop some stamping around and a couple of those extra bits of paper that I need to finally attach, and then ready to put the final touches on. So I'm going to mount the photo and use another of the Shimmers Gold products just because they are so pretty and they are so gold. I really just felt like this layout needed a couple more touches. Now you'll notice here that I have a little bit of a fight with the gold thread. For whatever reason, my hands were not doing what I wanted them to do, and this gold thread kept running away from me. So eventually I will get this thread all bunched up ready to pop beneath the photo, and again just another little element to add texture and interest to the page. So a couple of little touches of that gold thread. We're going to use some of the Kaisercraft flowers, and we're going to use one of those flare buttons from the Free Spirit collection as well. Okay, so the layout's starting to come together. I've added another little touch of that gold thread just beneath the photo to give a tiny little view of that thread sticking through there. Now the flower, I felt initially I was going to cut that little tail off, but I decided to just wrap it around a paintbrush and give it a nice little curly end. And I'm going to go ahead and do that with those other flowers that I'll use on the layout later as well. Now I'm looking at that white flower and I think, you know what, it's just sticking out a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and colour it with some of that Shimmers Gold paint. And the paint is from the kit that contains all those pretty gold colours. So definitely have a look at some of those shimmer products if you haven't checked them out before, because they're so much fun to work with and they're really easy to use, whether you're using the packaging technique, painting them, adding some little touches like I am here. That gold shimmer really does just give a beautiful colour. So I'm happy with that, and now I'm going to work on some of the placement of these particular parts. So going ahead and sticking some of this down, a couple of those extra flowers in those red and black colours just to match up with that mood board and the theme that I've got going on here. So beautiful little touches, those Kaiser flowers, and they just fit so perfectly. I went through a stage with layouts where I would use flowers quite a bit and they were always featuring on a page. Now I tend to not use them quite as often. For some reason flowers have sort of dropped off my radar a little bit, and I'm making more and more flat layouts. So having this one that was lovely and romantic that I could use up some flowers for, that was a really great layout for me. So I looked at this picture because it was gold and it was from the collection and it was quite pretty, and cut it out thinking I would use it as my title, but I didn't really like it. So I've gone through my stash and I've pulled out some old stickers, and I'm just going to go through and attach some stickers to this layout. That'll be the final touches that I'll do for this particular page. A couple of little stickers from the stash to give it a little bit of a story aspect. And the final thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and use black ink around the edge of the page, sticking a couple of those loose papers down just to finish everything off and make sure it's nice and tidy and attached, so that when it goes in an album I'm not going to lose any of that page that I've put together. So coming up shortly you'll see a couple of close-ups of the detail of this page and a final picture of the layout. I really hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did putting it together for you. I've got a couple more videos coming up later in the month with some really wonderful products from Kaiser Craft and some more in the Cocoa Vanilla Free Spirit range. So make sure you check back to the channel, the Scrapbook Boutique blog, or my blog at Timeless Craft Mama. Thanks so much for watching, and if you have any comments, please feel free to leave them, and I will talk to you next time.